Yeah, it all started about 4 years ago. So I can say that I've done my first 4 year cycle and it wrapped up around the time of the conference because it was when the first conference was happening. Whenever nuclear power got brought up in the context of Bitcoin mining, it was within the context of reactors have been shutting down. Germany's shutting down their fleet. Several reactors in the United States had been shut down recently. The Vogel reactor had been taking 10 plus years and it was only just getting finished. And there's another, the project in Finland that was also just recently finished that are way over budget, way over expected time. So it's puts a kind of a stain on the perspective of the industry. So I had been aware of the action plans that Canada and other countries are putting together to deploy and develop a lot of the small modular reactor technologies. The intent is that they'll be able to be smaller, modularized, container uh, deployable, like built mass produced in factories, similar to how we build aircraft and large cargo ships and whatnot. So there'll just be an assembly line where we can build the reactors and they can be quickly deployed, and then that will start upgrading many of like remote communities and smaller grids off of hydrocarbons and displace those to higher order uses, because we're never going to stop using hydrocarbons. If we just stop using them for electricity, we will be able to use them for more things like hydrogen production, for synthetic fuels and all of that stuff. But I see this playing out kind of like the pioneer species that Brandon Quidden has written about. And the idea is that these SMRs, in many locations that we want to build them, the markets aren't typically big enough to support nuclear power. So we can use Bitcoin mining as an always available, perfectly scaled load that can match any SMR deployment to any location, no matter how remote, whether it's a few megawatts or a few hundred megawatts that we're dealing with. And then one of the key unlocks that Bitcoin mining allows for is that we can treat nuclear power not just as base load power, which is what is typically done, because we want to always have the nuclear power being consumed 100% of it 24/7. If we need to start like flexing its load and curtailing its load, it starts affecting the economics negatively. So we want to be able to sell all that power all the time. But typically, when you're deploying power to a remote community, you're going to have some variance between their peak demand and their base load demands. And it's in many cases, it can be almost like half the load. You could be using as much as needing 10 megawatts at your like most extreme coldest day of the year, but then in the summer you're only using 5 megawatts. So for a lot of the year, if you have 10 megawatts of nuclear power installed, but you can go as low as only needing 5 megawatts, you have to find something that can fill in that margin. And there aren't that many flexible loads that can just fill that margin anywhere we want in the world. So Bitcoin mining is an ideal candidate to do that, is you don't necessarily have to have the top of the line miners. You can have something that's a little bit older, that's a little bit more tolerant to disruption in regards to their economics. And then the key unlock is now we can think about building them bigger, because if now we can build to peak load, we can build to excess future load that we're considering. If we're expecting a community or an industrial site to grow or like expand its infrastructure and connect transmission lines to more communities, and then as you're adding more local demand, you can offload your Bitcoin mining capacity to another facility, and you can kind of like cascade that together. And as one of these nodes first matures, then you can redeploy into the next node and then into the next node as they they start becoming more just accommodating for higher order power users. Like as yeah, the Bitcoin mining comes in first, and then within like the first year you have like a water treatment center, then you've got to service your hospitals, then you start having heavy industry, and all of this starts displacing the Bitcoin miners because they will be higher on the stack of energy utility uses. It's basically just kind of like, if you use the marginal utility argument, like the Bitcoin miners are the first of the stack that will relinquish their power when it's needed by something higher in the community. And it's basically exactly, I want to play out exactly what Gridless is doing, except I want to use it for SMRs, and I want to wrap it around the the action plan that Canada has for this technology. And that's one of the first ways that I started seeing this opportunity. And I started putting that forward. But now I'm starting to see things like the Bitcoin treasury companies and nuclear power companies, these vendors. There's a lot of periods of time where it's kind of, so you're sitting on idle capital waiting for like a licensing procedure to happen before you can start construction. So, and then there's even periods where like you have to consider the waste and remediation and decommissioning at the end of life of these things. So you're going to have to be saving capital for that time that's 40, 60 years in the future, and you want to be able to preserve it. So I'm also arguing that Bitcoin should be part of those funds to preserve that capital long into the future and support those endeavors. And then now we've got things like the bit bonds, and that might be an interesting way for these vendors that want to build this SMR technology to raise capital and have that Bitcoin alongside of it to make it just make it more economically feasible so that they outside and reduce the dependence on like state sponsorship and loan guarantees. I think that there's something there that can work, but all of these elements kind of like play together, because then you can even have the mining feeds into servicing the debt coupons, and you can have like a Bitcoin flow and a cash flow to service different tranches of investors, and it can get kind of interesting. And I'm hoping to get an opportunity to talk to some of the people that are more immersed in this, to work out some to flesh out these ideas better, because I'm not a structured finance expert in any way. So I would like to speak with one so that we can see if there's any way that we can make a product like this feasible for a company that's trying to build this technology. Because I think there's like having energy companies and energy infrastructure companies with like a Bitcoin strategy is going to be a lot more interesting than like a hotel company like Metaplanet. Like I love what they're doing, but I think there's a lot more to what we can do when we have like a nuclear reactor supporting Bitcoin mining, financed by Bitcoin, and then also like facilitating like flows and payments as well. Because I don't know if you've spoken with Bob Burnett or listened to much of his podcast, but he has these ideas about how block space is going to be a commodity, and then so we can start thinking about it in that way. If you own the power plant, you own Bitcoin mining, and then you're also trading block space commodities to financial institutions, and like it's all maturing and starting to come together, but it's going to require some intrepid pioneers that are adventurous and a little more risk taking in the nuclear space, where typically everything is very risk averse and trying to minimize any uncertainty and like any negative perceptions of the technology. And there's definitely people in the nuclear space that see Bitcoin still as the but it's for criminals and it uses too much energy argument. So there's definitely some education to work through to overcome some of those barriers, but we will get there.
For me, energy companies seem to have one of the biggest future potentials for embracing Bitcoin. It's like it would be a no-brainer if they are partnering up, even like even if they don't do structured finance products, which I think is a great idea, but just like using Bitcoin mining for all sorts of things that they're doing. I think this is a great thing, and we have heard it. I think multiple times on the podcast from multiple different people, from Lisa Huff, from Bob Burnett, from other people, from Chris Klager, from TerraHash of Germany recently. So many people mentioned that like energy companies are primed to embrace Bitcoin because it solves a real problems from them, even if they don't like Bitcoin. Even if they don't like Bitcoin, they could still use Bitcoin mining.
No, it's such an effective tool. Like there is literally power plants that have just like a resistive heater, just a large load bank of resistive heaters to take excess load. And like that is all we are proposing to do, is replace technologies like that with Bitcoin miners. And like I've been working on a model myself that compares these things, and it shows that if you have the option to sell power, like even at a few cents a kilowatt hour, it the model almost always chooses to sell it instead of like storing it in batteries and displacing like arbitraging it from low demand periods to high demand periods. It typically wants to just sell that power as much as possible, and then you cycle that in to paying for upgrades to the grid and refinancing and the infrastructure, and it almost becomes like self-perpetuating how we can recycle it into each other. And then we see other ways that the Bitcoin mining is being used for like heat reuse. Like there's entire communities in Finland with tens of thousands of people that just they replace their electric heaters we're just heating water and sending it to a community, and that's now been replaced by Bitcoin miners. Like the entire province of Quebec here is they're pretty much all electric heat, and they are blessed with abundant hydropower. So there's no excuse that they couldn't start transitioning over to using more Bitcoin mining for heat. And then like out in Vancouver, there's a company called Mint Green that's doing similar. They're finishing whiskey as with the Bitcoin mining heat, like drying logs. Just I've got an S9 behind me that I use as a space heater in the winter. I think that's going to be an added value stream. And then just like the fact that they have that flexibility and they're able to absorb capacity that would otherwise get wasted. Like we set the floor at 4 cents kilowatt hour. Like even if you're running S9s, it's like 2 cents kilowatt hour that would otherwise not be made back. But now we have like the higher end ASICs, right? Sounds like we're getting sub 10 joules per terahash. So that's like if you just plug that into a wall, you're getting almost 20 cents kilowatt hour out of that. Even at the low hash prices that we're having right now, like I think we're at like $50 per petahash per day, which is like where the margins of the all the miners out there start to get razor thin. So it is interesting to start seeing the dynamic, like the price goes down and then the difficulty starts changing, and the network adjusts and it moves on, and we we all are all participating in its development and its evolution and how it's fitting into these different systems, power systems, heating systems. It's yeah, it's it's so big that yeah, sometimes like you start thinking about how big it can be, and you get too far into the future, and you're like, we have to think about what's going on now. But yeah, because I've let my head get a little too far in the future with this nuclear stuff, because I'm trying to set up the pieces for when we finally get these SMRs going in the next 3 to 4 years. That this is like where it could be, and like the advancements that have happened in the last 4 years, even just since starting to pay attention to this, are like this is going to be a revolutionary change. But the problem is the markets that it's changing are typically very slow moving. So it's it's not happening everywhere all at once, but it's is happening, and it is starting to put the puzzle pieces together in a way that it's undeniable at this point that we are going to yeah, we're witnessing a fundamental change to our energy systems and our financial systems, and the entire global order is up for grabs right now, and Bitcoin seems to be at the center of it, and it's very fun to be a part of it.
It's really fun. It's like we have this energy revolution. We have Bitcoin with the financial revolution. We even have AI, which completely revolutionizes how we work and how we find information and how we process information. I mean, we even like how we deploy workforce. The perfect summary for me is always like, what a time to be alive in general.
Oh, it's wild, especially like, yeah, you're a bit younger than me, but I still remember the time before the internet was everywhere, and like going outside was a lot more common, and now it's like now you have to go outside to escape the digital world, and it's almost flipped. Like it was an escape for a while, but now it's become overwhelming and part of our lives. That like yeah, the AI stuff is amazing. Like I use it quite a bit. Like I don't even Google anymore. Like my first instinct is just ask the question to the AI, and it'll give me a far more uh, concise and organized answer for the questions that I have. And then before you know it, you're having a full on conversation about all these random ideas about like books you're reading, about like ideas that you heard of. Just something just comes up randomly on a podcast, and just this thought, and you just like just plug it into the AI, and you'll get to it better. Back to it later. Or if it's something that's deeper, you send it for deep research, and it comes back 30 minutes later with like a PhD level dissertation about whatever the hell you wanted to learn about. And it is interesting seeing people that aren't keeping up with it. Like you use it a lot, so you kind of see that it's improving so quickly, and it's making mistakes less and less. But there's people that used it earlier that were like, oh, it's making mistakes, it'll never work, and then they kind of just like let it go. But then you try to explain to them like, yes, like this AI is doing this stuff. Like you person that's never coded before, you can just tell the robot what you want, and it will make code for you. The barrier to entry for coding is now like so low that even my wife would be able to do it, and she's never like touched coding before in her life. And it's remarkable what it is going to unlock for people that are actually have the wherewithal and to see where it's going and prepare themselves for it, and actually they gain experience adapting to a world where this exists now, because it's not going away. And yeah, we might as well learn how to use it productively and adapt to it while while we can, because it's going to be another thing like Bitcoin, where whoever adapts to it earlier is going to be at such an asymmetric advantage to those that don't, that it's like we're almost going to start diverging into like different species, that people that use the robots and people that don't, and it's going to be, there's going to be some divergences, and people that like, yeah, that completely reject it, and people that go all in on it, and yeah, it's going to get weird, but yeah, let's enjoy the ride.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.